They didn't believe one man could stop an entire artillery network. They didn't believe one rifle could change the course of a battlefield. And at first, they didn't even believe the reports. But then, the shelling stopped. Observation posts went silent. Entire enemy sectors collapsed without explanation. And by the time anyone understood what was happening, more than 100 enemy observers would never report again. At dawn on Bougainville Island, the jungle never woke up. It was already alive. The insects never stopped. The air never cooled. The humidity wrapped around your skin like a second uniform that never came off. Even when the guns were silent, the jungle breathed, moved, listened. By the time command sent me forward, 3 mortar crews from our company had already been wiped out in less than 48 hours. Every time our men moved supplies, artillery found them. Every time a squad tried to reposition, shells followed within minutes. Someone was always watching, and in jungle warfare, being watched meant one thing: death. My mission sounded simple when it was spoken aloud. Find the men who could see and make sure they never saw again. That was it. No ceremony, no speech, just a map, coordinates written in pencil, and permission to operate alone. They didn't send me because I was the strongest. They didn't send me because I was fearless. They sent me because I was quiet, because I could move without disturbing the jungle, because I could disappear without leaving a shadow. I began moving before first light every day, always alone. My world became small: my rifle, water, ammunition, and the sound of my own breathing. No radio, no squad, no rescue. Every ounce mattered. Every sound mattered. The jungle punished carelessness instantly. The first observer I found was on a limestone ridge overlooking a narrow supply trail we used at night. He had binoculars and a field phone strapped across his chest. He never once turned around. At 7:14 in the morning, I fired 1 round. The sound cracked through the humid air. His binoculars fell first. Then his body followed, tumbling down rock and vines into green darkness. 3 minutes later, the shelling across the valley stopped completely. That was my first confirmed kill on Bougainville. It wouldn't be my last. Within days, the Japanese realized something was wrong. Their artillery started failing. Observers vanished. Positions were abandoned without explanation. Entire firing plans collapsed overnight. They moved ridges, shifted valleys, tried new elevations. Nothing worked, so they changed their focus, they stopped hunting our infantry, and they started hunting me. The first sniper nearly ended everything on the 4th morning. I was repositioning along a ravine when a round struck the tree above my head and buried itself inches from my face. I never saw the muzzle flash, but I heard the direction. I pressed my face into wet bark and stayed frozen for 40 minutes while sweat ran into my eyes and my breathing slowed into a mechanical rhythm. At 9:42, a single leaf drifted against gravity. That was all the evidence I needed. I waited for my pulse to settle and fired once. A body fell from a tree I had passed twice that morning. By the end of the first week, 17 enemy casualties were officially confirmed, and the jungle began to grow quiet in places that had never known silence. That silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, heavy, oppressive, constant. I learned quickly that killing observers was only half the job. The other half was surviving afterward. Every shot was a confession, and every confession brought hunters. Each day followed a brutal rhythm. I moved while the sky was still dark. I froze when the sun rose. I stayed motionless through midday when even insects slowed from the heat. I moved again before dusk. Then I vanished into shadow before night patrols began. I slept in broken fragments of time. 10 minutes here, 15 there, always sitting, never flat. My muscles forgot how full rest felt. 2 weeks into operations, they coordinated their first organized counter-hunt. 3 snipers at once, 1 high, 1 low, 1 moving. The plan was simple: force me to fire, reveal my position, collapse from 3 sides. At 11:26, the first bullet snapped past my ear so close, I felt the heat of it. I rolled downhill into thorn brush and choking mud and stayed completely still for nearly an hour as they searched. They passed close enough that I could hear their boots sliding on wet stone, vines snapping under their hands. But they never saw me. And when they repositioned, I saw them. The first exposed himself through impatience, the second through confidence, the third never fired at all. 3 controlled shots, 3 bodies motionless in the undergrowth. By the time intelligence updated the board, the number read 32. Still, no one spoke about it aloud, because speaking made it real, and in the jungle, nothing ever stayed real for long. By October, Japanese artillery units on Bougainville were operating blind across entire sectors. Our casualties from shelling dropped more than 60%. That wasn't heroism, it was mathematics. Remove the eyes, and the guns become useless. The enemy adapted again. They stopped using binoculars, they started using men as bait. One day I watched an observer wave his arms from an exposed ridge, deliberately careless, trying to draw my fire. I didn't shoot. I waited. 30 minutes later, I saw the real threat, the sniper watching him, waiting for me to reveal myself. That sniper died instead. The next morning, they sent 5 men into the jungle to recover bodies. Only 2 returned. By late November, my confirmed total reached 87. That was when command made a mistake. They pulled me back. They wanted the results without the risk. They handed my rifle to another man. He was skilled, disciplined, but he wasn't invisible. They found him on his 3rd day. He never fired a single confirmed shot. I got my rifle back and returned to the jungle alone. The next observer fell at 06:55 the following morning, then another that afternoon, then another just before dusk. By December, I was no longer called a sniper. I was called a problem. Enemy communications showed panic. Entire artillery units requested permission to abandon firing positions after only one unexplained casualty. They abandoned ridges, abandoned posts, abandoned entire sectors. Still, they kept sending men. When my count passed 100, I stopped counting personally. The numbers followed me in reports whether I wanted them or not. I focused only on routine: move, listen, wait, fire once, disappear. After the count reached 87, the jungle itself changed. Patrols stopped moving predictably. Artillery fire returned in short, violent bursts. Observers no longer stayed isolated. They moved in teams, coordinated, disciplined. The war adapted to me, and that was when I realized something dangerous. They were no longer trying to avoid me. They were trying to trap me. On the morning of November 28th, I moved before dawn along a ridge I had already used twice before. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, leaving fog hanging low over the canopy. This time, nothing fired at me. That should have been my first warning. At 06:41, I spotted the observer. He stood exposed, careless on purpose, binoculars loose on his chest. He was bait. I shifted 12 feet without lifting my body. When I fired, he fell exactly as expected. What I didn't expect was the machine gun fire behind me at the exact same second. They had placed a heavy gun directly on my withdrawal route. The trap was already closed. I rolled from the ridge as bullets ripped through branches overhead. Dirt sprayed my face. Bark exploded around my head. I slid nearly 20 yards into a ravine before stopping. For the first time on Bougainville, I wasn't hunting. I was being hunted. They advanced slowly, 2 above, 1 east, 1 low through vines. They had learned from me. I stayed motionless in tangled roots and standing water until my muscles burned and my vision narrowed. At 7:19, one of them slipped on wet stone. That sound betrayed him. 1 shot. Silence. The others froze. They waited for the second shot. It never came. By 08:04, I moved under their stillness and vanished. By midday, I reached friendly lines with 1 confirmed kill, and a lesson burned permanently into my nerves. From that day forward, the jungle was no longer neutral. It hunted. Prisoners later confirmed they were offering food, rank promotions, tobacco, and supplies to whoever killed the invisible rifleman. 3 teams were assigned exclusively to hunting me. They failed, but they came closer every time. On December 6th, they nearly succeeded again. They followed heat patterns through steam vents in a flooded ravine where I had held position for over 6 hours. I only detected them because 1 man coughed. That cough saved my life. 2 fast shots, 2 bodies. I escaped underwater while rounds cracked the surface above me. By that point, the reports finally began circulating through classified channels. The man the enemy was hunting. The man artillery crews feared. The man whole sectors were abandoning without understanding why. His name was Adalbert Waldron, and by the end of the campaign, the number beside his file would read 109. The days blurred together after that. Ridge after ridge, tree after tree, shot after shot. I lost track of dates. Time collapsed into heat and movement. My hands developed permanent tremors from tension. My hearing sharpened unnaturally. I could tell animal movement from human movement instantly. I could feel danger before I saw it. My last confirmed kill on Bougainville came at sunset in early January. An observer climbed into position, believing darkness would protect him. He was wrong. At 238 yards, I fired once. When his body slid down the rock face, the artillery covering that entire sector never fired again. The final number recorded in official combat logs was 109 confirmed enemy casualties from one rifle and one shooter. No parades followed, no speeches, no celebration, just silence where death once fell from the sky. After Bougainville, my war continued elsewhere. But the jungle had already taught me everything no training manual ever could. Noise creates attention. Attention creates targets, and targets do not live long. When the war finally ended, I did not return as a hero. I returned as a man whose best work had been done in silence. Years later, people would write about numbers, about tallies, about records, but none of them would ever write about the waiting, the hours without motion, the insects crawling across your face while you hold your breath, the sound of your own heartbeat threatening to betray you. They would never write about the moment before the shot. When you realize the man in your scope has no idea that history is about to close in on him, they would only write the result, the number, 109. And that number saved more lives than it ever took. If real stories still matter, press like. Subscribe for documented war history, and comment where you're watching from. Because legends are loud, but real history works in silence.